Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. We have another accuser's lawsuit that's going to move forward against Jeffrey Epstein. And this lawsuit was brought by a woman named Teresa Helm, and she claims that Jeffrey Epstein raped her, committed battery and false imprisonment against her, and she's seeking some reparations in the case. And it just shows the level of Epstein's crimes, how far-reaching they were. There were so many women and girls who were caught up in this situation that nobody even has heard from yet. How many unnamed women are still out there that have not come forward yet, who still carry the burden of what happened to them, or maybe even have some sort of repressed emotions about it, and they're not even dealing with what occurred. Now we see that this lady Teresa Helm, her case is moving forward. That's a good thing. Anytime one of these accusers brings their case forward and it starts moving through the justice system, I mean the legal system, that's certainly a positive thing. But the issue that I always have, of course, is even though the court is taking a closer look at it and it's moving through the system, I'm always worried that the system is so stacked against people like Miss Helm here and the other survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, that the deck is certainly stacked against them, and it's an uphill battle for them to recoup and get some of these funds that they deserve from what they experienced. So we're going to jump into this article. It's from the Dayton Daily News. The headline is Oakwood Woman's Lawsuit Against Jeffrey Epstein Moves Forward. The author of the article is Wayne Baker. Teresa Helm of Oakwood is one of 5 women that has sued Jeffrey Epstein's estate in U.S. District Court, accusing him of rape, battery, and false imprisonment, and seeking unspecified damages in the civil suit. Well, look, if what she says is true, and at this point, I really have I don't doubt any of these women who come forward at this point when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, because there is such a pattern of his behavior, and we know that his reign of terror was what went on for so long, and it ranged so wide that there can be dozens more women who were caught up in this who still haven't come forward. So every single time I hear somebody make an accusation against Epstein and his estate, I certainly take it seriously. Now, that does not mean I believe every accusation at face value, right? There has to be some evidence. I have to be able to do a little digging. We have to vet it. There's a lot of things that have to occur. But I don't ever dismiss any of these women who come forward out of hand when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. Like if it was, there's certain situations where you look at a case and the whole entire thing, and you say to yourself, well, something smells funny here. Is this like a revenge case, somebody looking to score revenge against this guy? You work through all of that stuff and you try and figure out if this is a credible accusation, right? Now, when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, everything seems to be credible at this point because we know what this man was up to, and we know how many women and girls were abused by him. So I don't just I take everything that these accusers say as legit, right? And it's hard not to do that at this point when it comes to this specific case, because there is so much evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of sexual assaults, and we've only heard from a certain amount of the girls who have been assaulted at this point. So hopefully more and more come forward when they realize that people at this time around are taking them serious. And that's what we need to do here, folks, in this case, in this Jeffrey Epstein case especially. We need to take these ladies seriously, these girls seriously. And if somebody comes forward and says that they were abused by Epstein or his associates, then they should be listened to and they should be given a platform to tell their story, and then leave it up to the courts to decide what's true and what's not, right? But for anyone to just dismiss these girls and ladies out of hand at this point, that's just not, it's not correct. It's not the way it should be, because there is such a nexus of Epstein's crimes now, and we know exactly what he was up to when we know that there were so many more girls that have come forward that we have to take every single accusation seriously. Recent action regarding the lawsuit indicates legal wrangling in the Virgin Islands has raised issues regarding voluntary settlement plans for Epstein's alleged victims. It's more than that. What Denise George is doing in the Virgin Islands is screwing the whole entire thing up. It's going to cause havoc with these other cases because everyone's going to be waiting on the Virgin Islands case to go through because that's where the estate was filed at. So the Virgin Islands is playing a very significant role when it comes to the civil aspect of this case. And with Denise George's BS and her actions, it really scares me that these survivors are going to end up getting hosed and not get the proper amount of funds that they should be receiving. Because at the end of the day, these women and these girls who were exploited by Jeffrey Epstein deserve every last cent, okay? Every last cent. The Virgin Islands deserves nada. Prosecutors said Epstein sexually exploited and abused dozens of women and girls as young as 14 at his homes in New York and Florida between 2002 and 2005. All these articles seem to forget Zorro Ranch, and it bothers me. Why are there no charges filed in New Mexico yet? No state charges against this man. I don't understand how that estate and how that property is still standing the way it is without being raided. I mean, okay, we know that Florida and New York were definite hubs of this activity, right? But you're telling me that nobody has come forward from New Mexico and said that New Mexico was the location of their assault? I mean, come on. We know that that's not the case. We know that girls have come forward and said that they were abused in New Mexico, and still we've seen nothing about it. According to court papers documenting the recent lawsuit, Helm, now 40, was 22 and she was hired as a traveling masseuse by Epstein. Again, another traveling masseuse story. This guy had so many different quote-unquote traveling masseuses that flew around with him, and girls that weren't even trained as masseuses that flew around with him to give him massages, which we all know were a lot more than massages, and nobody had any idea what he was up to, huh? It's just normal behavior for these rich guys to have masseuses everywhere, for their friends to get massages on planes, for their friends to come over and get their massages in the living room. This is just common behavior. Nobody said, hey, what the hell is going on? What's wrong with you people? Why are you doing this? That's why it's hard for me to believe that all of these clownfish that have come out and said, oh, I had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. There's no way he was touching kids around me. Yeah, I don't believe you. I'm sorry. Okay? I do not believe you. That's just the long and the short of it at this point. There's a big credibility problem with everybody who was associated with Epstein, and I don't believe a word any of them say without evidence at this point. Attorney Sigrid McCawley, a partner with the law firm Boies Schiller Flexner LLP, which is representing Helm, released information updating the case to the Dayton Daily News. I can tell you on good information that Sigrid McCawley really cares about what's going on in this case. That Sigrid McCawley is one of the good guys, well, good women in this case, somebody who truly cares about the survivors and is working tirelessly to make sure that the survivors get what they're due and that these scumbags get the justice that they deserve. So, I'm very critical of lawyers for the most part. You've heard me rant and rave about these lawyers that are always looking for fame and trying to insert themselves in the case, etc., etc. Sigrid McCawley is certainly not that sort of lawyer. She is very good at what she does, and Miss Helm is in good hands with Sigrid McCawley as her representation, in my opinion. Court documents show Epstein filed his will in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where several women claimed he sexually abused them, so the U.S. Virgin Islands court will need to approve any type of voluntary claims resolution program in lieu of further litigation. And I don't know where I sit on the voluntary claims resolution program. I'm kind of on the fence with it. Now, if it comes with no restrictions and it's an easy way for these survivors to get the money that they deserve, but they shouldn't have to sign any kind of NDA or anything like that. They should be able to tell their story. They should be able to be involved in any sort of litigation that moves forward. Because this is not your usual circumstances, right? This is a whole different sort of animal. So we have to look at it. Every single situation has to be looked at as a unique situation. There can't just be one overarching way we deal with things. It's ridiculous. It's like mandatory sentences. There should never be a mandatory sentence, okay? Each situation is unique, and each case is unique, and each person and their crimes are unique. So try the case as the case. So I really believe that there's a place maybe for the restitution, the claims resolution program, and if some of these survivors want to skip all of the other rigmarole and they need their funds, then I don't think anybody should stand in the way of that. Now, personally, if it was me, I'd be taking it all the way to the courts. I'd be litigating. I'd be going through discovery, because that's the way to truly hold these people accountable. But at the same time, not everybody's built for that. A lot of these women suffered trauma. They suffered a lot of anxiety and depression afterwards. And if the money that would come out of a fund like this would give them a little bit of peace of mind and comfort, then I'm all for it. But what I would say is this, that if somebody does go through that resolution program, they should not only get the funds that are promised to them, but the estate should pay them for their medical bills, as far as going to seek therapy, or if they've sought out therapy in the past and they've paid for it out of pocket, they should be made whole by the estate. There should be no rock left unturned for these survivors at this point. Haven't they went through enough, folks? Haven't they suffered enough at the hands of not only these disgusting individuals, but the government who turned their back on them? When's it going to be time for people like this, people who have truly been wronged, to be, made whole again, to be shown a little bit of deference, and for the court to say, all right, look, we know that we were wrong, and these disgusting morons were certainly wrong. So we're going to make a couple of, a couple of exceptions maybe in this case, or whatever it may be. But there has to be a way for these women to get these funds and still be able to tell their story. That's the only way that I think that a voluntary claims resolution program should be administered. And I don't think it should be administered by Jeffrey Epstein's estate. It should be some sort of independent board that comes in and administers this, because we know that there's all sorts of nonsense going on with Indike and Khan, and we know that neither of them are reliable players in this story. A hearing was held earlier this month in the case in front of Judge Deborah C. Freeman, and one of the lawyers representing Epstein's case, Bennett Moskowitz, stated that the Attorney General for the Virgin Islands, Attorney General Denise George, is holding up the execution of the claims program. Yeah, well, we know that. We know that Denise George has came out and stated that she's holding all of this stuff up. And if her pursuits were noble, then I'd be okay with it. But her pursuits are not noble, in my opinion. She wants to get those islands back for the Virgin Islands, and she wants to piece them off, and she wants to keep that money. And the survivors are second, in my opinion, when it comes to her. The vast majority of alleged victims of Mr. Epstein have, through their counsel, voiced unequivocal support for and intend to participate in the voluntary program, which is great, Moskowitz stated to the court. He added, there is one reason and only one reason that the claims program hasn't commenced, and that is because the Attorney General for the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, who we firmly understand represents no victims, zero, has, for whatever reason that we don't understand, impeded the formal establishment of the program. Oh, well, he understands, he just doesn't want to say it. What he's trying to say right here, and if you read between the lines, what he is saying is that Denise George is trying to wet her beak as well. She's trying to get these islands for the Virgin Islands, and she doesn't represent the survivors in this case. And I have to, as much as it makes me ill, I have to agree with Moskowitz here, because it's the truth. I've been saying the same thing. Denise George needs to take a step back and reevaluate what her motivations are in this case, in my opinion, because she's not doing any good right now. McCawley and other lawyers representing the victims feel that the funds lack proper oversight and credibility, especially since Epstein filed his will in the Virgin Islands just 2 days before he died. Agreed 100%, Miss McCawley, and that's why I think it should be an independent board that distributes these funds. After a full forensic accounting investigation, all right, go through and forensically search for all of the money, find out where everything's at, put it all together, put it in a trust, and then let it be doled out as the cases come through the court by an independent group of people. Okay, people that have nothing to do with Epstein, people that have nothing to do with the prosecution, and let people come. There's people that do this, right? There's people that are they're involved in arbitration cases. They're mediators. There's ways to go about it. So I don't want to hear that. Well, this is the way it's done. Well, enough. All right, enough with this is the way it's done. You ever think that maybe this is the way it's done doesn't work? It's really important to these victims to seek justice in this circumstance, McCawley told the court. They want to move their cases forward. Of course they're interested in the claims program if that comes to fruition. But at this point, there's a lot that needs to go on before that can happen. Again, she's 100% right. And why wouldn't they be interested in the claims program? Why wouldn't they be interested in getting their money in a streamlined fashion? They deserve it, right? They deserve this money. They deserve to get it. And as long as they don't have to sign NDAs or, not tell their story ever or anything like that, then I believe that should be an option if that's the way that these women choose to go about it. I don't think there should be any roadblocks in their way at this point. They've suffered enough. They've went through enough. They've jumped through enough hoops. They've been lied about. They've been lied to. And they've been abandoned. So if some of these ladies decide that this is the route they want to go, then it's nobody's business to stand in their way. Judge Freeman said the court has no jurisdiction over the Virgin Islands and what the probate court there, or A.G. George, decides to do, but the lawsuit for Helm and the other women will move forward. See what I'm saying here about the Virgin Islands, folks? They've interjected themselves into this situation, and they do not need to be doing what they're doing. They're muddying the waters and making things much more difficult for the survivors in the pursuit of their own greed to get those islands after they were complicit in letting these survivors be assaulted. So basically, they're trying to assault these survivors twice in the Virgin Islands, it looks like to me. And the more I read about this stuff and the more of the story trickles out, the little bit that trickles out, the more I start to really detest Denise George. In August of 2019, the 66-year-old financier, pedophile, hanged himself in his cell at a federal jail as he awaited trial on federal sex trafficking charges. His death signaled the dismissal of charges in the case, but left open the question of whether or not Epstein's wealthy estate, valued at $577 million, actually $636 million now, will have to compensate his alleged victims. You know what? Another thing, I've said this from the beginning, they should have tried him even though he was dead. They should have let this case go forward even though he was dead. The survivors deserve that, and it would have really brought the house of cards down on the co-conspirators. But again, he was being protected even in death because of all of the skeletons he has buried in his closet that have to do with very, very, very powerful people, folks. Very powerful people who don't want one single document to come and see the light of day. And we've discussed a lot of those people ad nauseum on this podcast, and we're going to keep discussing these people, and we're going to keep exposing their behavior, and we're going to keep their feet to the fire on a daily basis. Because what is going on right now, especially down in the Virgin Islands, is really getting me agitated. Almost to the point where I'm going to have to think about a trip down there as well, because this is ridiculous now at this point. Denise George interference in this case has long-reaching ramifications that are reverberating throughout the court system at this point and having impact on other aspects of the case. So Denise George really needs to take a hard look in the mirror, and she needs to find out what she's doing. She needs to take a hard look in that mirror and ask herself, am I here for the survivors, to get justice for the survivors, or am I here to just grab up as much as I possibly can and put it in the bank? Because to me, it certainly seems like it's the second part. All right. Denise George is somebody that I do not trust at all. She is somebody that I think is being a huge roadblock in this case. And I think she is somebody that needs to really, like I said, take a look in the mirror, because she's not helping at this point, folks. She is not helping at all. So when it comes to this whole entire civil aspect of the case, it's going to be like this until we get to the conclusion. There's going to be all sorts of stuff that comes out, and all sorts of people that are trying to get their hand in the pocket of the estate. And it's going to be up to the lawyers for the survivors, like Sigrid McCawley, to make sure everything's on the up and up. And when you have a lawyer like Sigrid McCawley, well, you can count on things being on the up and up, because she is about her job. She truly cares about these women that she's representing. This is more than just a case to her, in my opinion. This is something that is, she's taking this to heart. Right? There's certain times at your job where you show up and it's just a job for you. And I'm sure it's like that for lawyers as well. And then there's other times you show up and you're invested in what's going on. You've bought into what's going on. So you're going to work harder. You're more diligent at what you do, et cetera, et cetera. And I truly believe that that's what's going on with Sigrid McCawley here. And I have it on from good sources that she is a very quality lawyer and somebody who truly does care about what's going on. Pretty much the complete opposite of Denise George. All right, folks, so I will be back later on today with the Daily Drop like usual. I hope everybody enjoys their Saturday afternoon, their Saturday morning. And if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI @protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Bobby_Capucci at Twitter. And if you would like to help support the podcast and you enjoy my work, you can click on the GoFundMe link inside of that description box. All right, folks, that's all for now. I will talk to you all later on.